I'm Eric Newburger with the United States Census Bureau, and today I wanted to talk to you about big data. Big data, big! Starting in the Enlightenment and coming down to today. Now, how big is it? Yes, very nice. It's the lunch crowd. Try the fish. I'll be here all week. All right. All right, so this is the 1790 census. This is what it actually looked like. This is a register page from the 1790 census. Each line represents one household. And you can see the kinds of questions we were asking. If you look closely, you can see there were certain required data fields. The marshals hired a lot of people. They went to towns, door to door, farm to farm, and they asked the name of the head of the family so you could avoid duplication. Right? So already, okay. No duplication. The count of the free white males, 16 plus years. Count of the free white females, or free white males under 16 plus years. So we're asking about age because we're interested in how many people can staff an army. Count of free white females. Interesting, 1790. Wanted to ask age of women, but the Congress was very nervous about asking women how old they were and thought that would be impolite. So we did not do that in 1790. And then count of all other free persons by sex and color, and then the count of slaves. The census is a recording of our history, including some of the really darker aspects of it. So, all right, but if you look closely at this sheet, you notice this column. This column that I've circled has other information in it. And when you start reading it, you see things like baker, blacksmith, widow. These were not required fields, but there was space on the form, and the individuals collecting the data thought it was important to know what people did and what their marital status was. We eventually had returns. The returns look like this. You notice we hadn't figured out how to put commas in yet. Interesting data visualization thing. When you break the numbers up into groups of three, it's easier to see. Now it's a visual, a big number that has groups of three. You can count the groups of three, and now you have an order of magnitude understanding, and you know which number to look at first, which is the digit to the far left. But this, we didn't do that yet. We can data visualization guy. I'm very excited about that kind of thing. But anyway, so these were the actual outputs. So you had a resident population of about 3.9 million. You had 13 states, total cost of $44,000. Yeah, I know, 44,000 with a TH. And the total output of the census in 1790 was 56 pages of reports. With a 56, with an F. So you had 3.9 million people down to 56 pages. So what is going on there? And you can see the nominal head of the census at the time, Thomas Jefferson, because of the position he held in the federal government. So what was it? Why 56? Okay. Because this was the age of the quill pen, and it was the age of movable type being a big deal. And the capacity for handling the amount of data that we had collected just wasn't there. It was the original big data problem. So how big a data problem was it? So back of the envelope calculation, you had 558,000 households, plus or minus. You had perhaps 35 households per register page. And by the way, that 35 number is not, that's me going onto the history website, downloading a bunch of pages, counting how many there are, and coming up with an order of magnitude average, because this'll do. All right. And so that's about 16,000 register pages in all. Okay, 16,000 pages, which included the name of the household, an ID of the household, age, race, sex, free versus slave, geographic location, because you have to know where they are, because it's all about apportionment. So you need to know where the people are so you can apportion, power based on representation. And then occupation and marital status, these sort of bonus categories that were added in. And when you consider, so that's 9 data items. And when you consider 558,000 households, it's about 5 million data fields or a bit more. And if you consider that some of them are text and some of them are numeric, I figure it's about 20 megabytes worth of data. In 1790, the age of the quill pen and where movable type was a big deal. This was a big deal. This is A lot. All right, so start. Why isn't it starting? My button isn't working. There we go. All right, so we had 20 megabytes of data, the original big data problem. This is a map of population density in 1790. This is the first data picture that we have of these United States, which was made in 1890, because that's how long it took. Because we didn't have, it's a big data problem, all right? What had happened, of course, in the intervening years is somebody had invented high-quality lithography, so we were able to make maps. It was this new technology that was not available before, and we were able to actually publish data in ways we hadn't been able to before. This may sound familiar to those of you who study the internets, I think they're called. All right, but this is not because the people back then did not want these data. This is James Madison. You may recognize him from some of your money. He was also one of the primary authors of the Constitution, a very, very smart man. And he was actually arguing in 1790 that we needed to ask about industry and occupation. We need to find out what people are doing. We need economic data. The Congress turned him down at that time. I mean, they weren't even asking women how old they were, so. And because on this knowledge, the legislature might proceed to make a proper provision for the agriculture, commercial, and manufacturing interests. He understood the importance of information for running a big thing like a country. And he proposed asking the number of persons employed in various arts and professions carried on in the United States. And of course, he was denied. But then the people who went out to do the collection also thought it was a good idea, so they collected it anyway. George Washington, you may have, George Washington, the founder of our country, the father of our country, who was also, he conducted the first agricultural survey of the United States. He went to Congress and he asked for money to conduct an agricultural survey. They said no, so he did it himself on his own dime. He sent letters to farmers all throughout this area, which was the dense sort of agricultural area of the United States at the time, population-wise, and he consolidated the data and he published it as a report. He did the first agricultural survey of the United States. That's how important data was to our founders. All right. In 1810, we actually finally did collect some manufacturing data. Congress came around, took 20 years, but okay. That we're going to collect manufacturing data. It actually, interesting story, didn't work. The collection, I wasn't there at the time, so I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know that the data was inconsistent in some ways, so we didn't end up tabulating those data, but we did in the next census. During the industrial age, we started asking about agriculture, commerce, manufacturing activities. In 1830, we started asking about disabilities, people with disabilities. We're now asking about that in the American Community Survey. We're still asking it after 196, 186 years. Yeah, okay. 184 years. I'm with the Census Bureau. I should be better at that. All right. 1850 was a big watershed for us because we stopped asking about individual households and we started asking about individual people. And if you think about that, so from 1840 to 1850, you have a rapidly growing country. You got more people anyway, and now you're counting each one of them individually. And when you multiply it all out, you end up with about 9 times as many records. It's about an order of magnitude increase in the amount of data between 1840 and 1850. In 1861, actually, these are results from the 1860 census. This is a very important map. This is it's the slave map of the southern states in 1860. As you consider the time frame, you consider how that important that would be. This was actually published as a special publication from the census using that lithography again, and also teaming up with the Coast Survey, who had mapping capabilities, to produce this slave map of the southern states. And this shows the proportion slave in each county. And you got to look at the details here where you can see the importance of riverine transport and the impact that had on people's lives. Where you can look at not a unified block, but some areas with large slave populations, some areas with very small slave populations. This was a very important map. It was actually created, as you can see at the top there, for the Sick and Wounded Soldiers Fund. It was sold to raise money for sick and wounded soldiers in 1861. It had an important part in our history. This is a very famous picture of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, and if you look in that lower corner, let me blow that up for you. Yeah, that's the map. Now the artist put that there on purpose, and you'll notice it's right next to a number of other texts and a sword, because information as a tool of, not information as a weapon. This was an important map, and it was yet one more sort of illustration of the importance of information to our founders and moving forward. This is a bonus one. I just have to show it to you. Okay, so this is from 1870, the 1870 census. It's a wealth map, dark colors, higher wealth. And remember the time, this is right after the Civil War. Look at the north-south gradient. And then look at Georgia and see if you can see the remains of the march of Sherman's march to the sea. In 1890, after we'd done quite a bit of work with data visualization in the 1870 and 1890 censuses with the high-quality lithography I mentioned to you, we had a new technology. That new technology looked like this. This is a Herman Hollerith tabulating machine. There are rooms at the Census Bureau building named after the man who invented this machine. This was the world's first really, it's an analog computer is what it is. And it was a tabulating machine. In 1880, we did the census by hand, and it took us 8 years to produce the results. In 1890, we did the census on this thing, and it took us 2 years to produce the results, and we did it twice to make sure they were right. All right, yeah, you're with me now. But now it was a tabulating machine, though, so all of our output looked like this, right? Or this, or even this. As you can see, it was tables. We were making tables. And these tables are, this is more than a table. You've got multiple dimensions in the box head. You've got multiple dimensions in the stub, right? This is a multi-dimensional analysis. This is a data set. It's printed on paper and pencil, but it's a or ink, I should say. But it is a data set. And we started producing more and more data sets. In fact, if you look at the history of data dissemination at the Census Bureau in the 20th century, it's really the history of more and better tables, more and more better data sets. Culminating in American Fact Finder. Who here has used American Fact Finder? Hands up, raise them high, be proud. I'm not going to ask you who has enjoyed the experience, but you have profited from the experience. Yes, it has served you very well because there's a lot there. Can anybody guess, and it is a lunch talk, so you can shout them out, guess, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, how many, and if you're from the Census Bureau, don't answer because you're disqualified, how many individual estimates, how many table cells are there on American Fact Finder as of last year? 132 million, a fine guess, but no thank you. 132 billion, not even. It's actually about, as of last year, it was about 370 billion. Yeah, wow, come on, a little gasp, okay, yeah, rock on. Every time we publish a new 5-year ACS file, which we do every year now, it's another 11 billion. And all of those have confidence intervals associated with them, so it's really more like 22 billion. We got a lot of numbers on this thing. You can with this a lot. I assure you, we don't know everything that's in there. It's 370 billion cells. There's a lot of knowledge that could be gained if only some group of people with some kind of technical skills that were interested in data, were interested in maybe finding out the history of the United States in numbers down to the neighborhood level. If you were interested in that, this might be a good source. And if only I could find groups of people to talk to who had those kinds of technical interested people, that would be great. Yes, it's you. I'm talking about you. You're all supposed to be, okay. All right, so that's American Fact Finder. So it's a challenge. It's a big, big challenge. It's so much data that's a big challenge. So still, to us, big data. But since the invention of the internet and credit cards and smartphones, all of which have been around longer than most people remember, we have a different kind of data world now. We got the languages on Twitter. We heard some people talking about Twitter earlier. This is a map of showing Spanish, English versus other in the Washington D.C. metro area, and you can see the areas where people are who are sending out tweets in different languages as an indicator of. Well, you can see what it's an indicator of. This is Black Friday in 2009 as seen on eBay, tracking all of those. So we had social media data. These are transactional data on purchases. Here we have Google Flu, which we heard about earlier, and whether or not it's working, it's using that data source of search queries, right? And so that again, a different kind of transaction. So all of these transactional databases, such that it used, this is the world before the smartphone and the credit card and the social media, right? This is the world before the internet. We had official data, big. And then you had other data, which I really should say as other data, right? Little other data. Okay, and then, but today the world is a little bit more like this. We have official data, and then we have other data. Okay. The other data is big, it's huge. And if I were to draw these to scale, I don't think you could read the word where it says official data. I had to make it, you had to be able to see it. So we have a different world quantity. I was doing a little research. According to the report I was reading from the Federal Reserve, there are there's something around 100 billion credit card transactions every year, if you include credit cards and electronic money transfers of one sort or another. I think in 2012 it was 122 billion. The prior year was 88 billion. Something like it. The numbers are like let's call it 100 billion. We have 370 billion estimates in a data set, and we're adding 11 billion a year. We're very excited about that. Credit card, just electronic transfers. Forget about social media. Forget about other kinds of transactional data. It's 100 billion a year and growing rapidly. Quantity, it's changed. Does the Census Bureau still have a place? I think it's a legitimate question. I think you know how I'm going to answer that. Let me see if I can convince you to come onto my side. All right, here's the one reason why I think we have a place, and it is simply this. We count everyone, everywhere, since 1790. We count everybody. If you are on the internet, we count you. And if you're not on the internet, we also count you. In fact, we have a survey where we ask if you're on the internet. If you are consuming healthcare resources, we count you. And if you're not, we count you. Insured, uninsured, we count you. We don't care. We count you. If you shop in a particular big box retail chain, we count you. And if you don't shop in that big box retail chain, we count you. If you don't have a credit card, if you live in cash in a cabin in the woods where you have no electric bills because you have no electricity, if you are completely off the grid, we track you down and we count you. So this has some implications, and we've been doing this for a while. I mean, it's 1790. Everybody lived in the cabin in the woods off the grid. And we counted them then. So we count you, and that is important. There's this notion of ground truth, which we have and which we offer to you. All right. So you're a grocery store, and you know a lot about your customers. right? You ask them things, you have them fill out little surveys, you count them, you watch what they buy, whatever it is. Great, you've got customer data. You want to expand your store. Are there people out there who you could be selling to? You don't know, but we do. Take your data, subtract your people from the people we tell you are there. Whoever is left, that's who you can sell to. All right. And it is down to the neighborhood level. This is a percent of with income in the past 12 months below the poverty level by county for Nebraska, broken down by county. Let's focus in on just one county. It happens to be Douglas County, which we then break into tracts. And we got block level data, block group level data as well that we publish every year now because of the 5-year ACS. Who's a fan of the 5-year ACS? Everybody should have their hand up right now. All right. And time as well. We've been doing it since 1790. So the dependency ratio, everybody knows about the dependency ratio, right? This is this notion of there's the ratio of people who are of working age, right, 18 to 64, and how many people they are supporting. So they're on the denominator, and the numerator is people less than 18 and 65 plus. And you can see that in 1960, we had a pretty high dependency ratio. And then it's gone down, to right now it's at a historic low, right, in recent history, since 1960. And it's projected to go up. And then you can see that we're going to be going back to a place where we kind of were in 1960, although not quite as high, projection, except it's a very different kind of dependency. Because before we had a big blue bar, which are kids, and a very tiny bar, which are the 65 plus. We're flipping that over. We're going to have about equal. We're going to have a much higher older population. So it's going to be a dependency based on an older population rather than a younger population. Will we be investing more in schools or will we be investing more in nursing homes? I mean, it's these. If you're interested in how in seeing the history and where we're going, where we came from, I think we have your data source for you. This, just to make the point, this is on the map LED. Who knows about LED? Anybody know about LED? Yeah, I know, you're from LED. LED, this is local employment dynamics or local employer dynamics, and it's what we're actually showing here, this particular on the map representation is just an example. This is the jobs of $40,000 or more in the Washington, D.C. area. So you can see we're sitting in one of these right now, right? The darker areas are the jobs, the density of jobs of $40,000 or more. But do you notice it's jobs? It's people employed in jobs. This is where they work. This isn't where they live. LED gives you where people are during the day. And we count businesses too, as well as local governments. This is a county business patterns map, and here we're looking at the change in the number of healthcare providers by county from year to year. So, okay, so you've got a great model of surging seas. You're expecting sea level rise, and it's going to inundate places. How many people is that going to impact? Take your model of what places are going to be impacted, and then find out from us how many people live there and how many people work there. You have a model that shows you the cost of electricity by block in, or census tract actually in this case, in the New York City, the New York area, and compare that to poverty levels in those areas and see how those match up. Where might social services be needed? This is the maximum advertised download speed by tract in the whole nation. Compare that to where people are living and who's living there. What could you find out by finding out what services were available? If you are interested in providing new services in the electronic realm, might this map plus an income map of the same areas be useful to you? This is another application of Twitter. I like this one. I think this one's cute. Based on the text, they decide who's a local and who's a tourist. That's great. So now I know where the tourists are. A, I know where not to live. B, if I'm a business and I want to open, maybe I want to put myself there. But are there already businesses that are serving all those tourists? I don't know. Why don't I ask the Census Bureau? They know. County Business Patterns Map. We've got the ground truth. And plus, we'll tell you who's working in those areas. Well, not who, but what kinds of jobs are there. All right, so there are 4 questions that if you find yourself, that I think the Census Bureau, there are 4 questions that I think the Census Bureau can really, really answer, okay? And I think we're going to continue to be able to answer this because as far as I can see, I haven't seen a transactional database yet that I think includes everybody. All the transactional databases seem to be selecting groups of people, and it's because they're mostly administrative records of one sort or another, right? An administrative record exists to administer a particular kind of program. And whether it's taxes, now you've only got taxpayers, or whether it's healthcare, well, that's the people who are consuming healthcare. The people who are in the records are the people who the program applies to. But if you want to find everybody, if you want to find who's left out, if you want to find who does it impact, if you want to find what's nearby that could help, and if you want to find out how do we get here, I think that's the United States Census Bureau at your service. And I hope that we will be for a long time. That's me. That's my phone number and my email address, and you call me if you need. Questions?
Yeah. There's this great story in The Economist a few months ago about how the survey questions had changed in the census over time. And there's a little anecdote about how, like in the 70s, there was apparently this influx of Hispanics because one of the options was Central American, and that was where apparently a bunch of Hispanics in Iowa and Kentucky, because that was just a confusion in the survey question. So I think it shows that there's room for how folks can engage with these surveys and how much data can be extracted. So that's the setup. Here's my question. What questions do you wish the census asked?
Like I would answer that in front of a live microphone. He wants to know what questions I wish we could ask, but presently don't. There I'm torn. I'm one of the survey stats at the Census Bureau, so I'm deeply concerned with not messing up what we already have. There are some questions that we cannot ask. Like, for example, have you committed a felony, sir, in the last year? I actually can't ask that. Have you broken the law in any way? Did you cross a border illegally? I can't ask that. People call me all the time and say, well, how many people are living in the United States who came here without papers? Well, I really can't tell you. Because that's a question I can't ask. That's a conversation stopper. All of the data that we have on household data basically boiled down to having a conversation with someone. And whether it's a paper form or whether it's someone who shows up at your house, it's always a conversation. And by the way, if you think about it, the conversation is exactly the same conversation that you have with your Aunt Mabel. Yeah, really? And how many children do you have now? Really, that's wonderful. And what grade is little Timmy in? And what is your husband doing? Really? That's wonderful. And about how, that must be a terrible commute. How long does it take to get to work? This is the conversation. And by the way, if you've seen the people in some of our the field reps that we have who are doing this all the time, a lot of them kind of look like Aunt Mabel. I mean, they've got that persona about them, and when they show up at your door, you just want to offer them tea. It's really amazing. Anyway, that's for the people who are doing our monthly surveys. But the questions I wish we could ask, I'm tempered by the question. I really like a lot of the questions. Like, good God. That tells me I'm supposed to, I'm still allowed to take questions, but not supposed to keep on my talk. But I already finished that, so we're okay. What question? Let's see. I'll tell you what. We already ask about health insurance, so I think that's really important. We already have a survey that asks about healthcare consumption. We ask about how many times you've been to the doctor and stuff. We have some surveys that do that. We've got surveys on employment. We've got surveys on industry. We've got What would be great for me, because I'm from the communications directorate, I'd love to ask, have you used the Census Bureau website? Have you? And we actually have some numbers on that. By the way, do you know we have this great website? Has everybody been to the website? Raise your hand if you've been to the website, www.census.gov. It's just census.gov. How hard is that? Guess how many visitors a year? Just guess. I'm very proud of this number. We get about 50 million visits, and it's something around 33 million, 35 million individual visitors. So it's a very popular place for data. What other, I'm sorry, I can't. What other questions? Yeah. Yes.
How many API keys have you given out, and how much data has been downloaded, or how many people downloaded your data last year?
I do have those numbers, but I haven't memorized them, so I won't answer because I'm sorry. But it's the API keys are in the thousands. Oh, by the way, the API, does everyone know that the Census Bureau has an API? Funnily enough, if you went to this website, our developer website, you could sign up for an API key. The API presently thank you for that question. The API presently has the 2010 census data, the 1990 census data, the 2000 census data, both short and long form for 1990 and 2000. 2010 is, of course, only a short form. However, we now have the 5-year ACS data in the API for 2012. So you can make that time series from 1990 to 2000 to 2010. And it's all free. Just go on the website. There it is, census.gov/developers, and sign up for an API key today, please. Yes. Follow-up, certainly.
Last year during the shutdown, the data went offline.
Yes.
Do you have plans to put the data out into the network so that the next time government shuts down, it'll happen again, it can be available?
Did you seriously just ask me what our plans are for the next shutdown that we're planning for? I think you did.
Well, I
Next question.
what are the plans for
I talk to later, but I mean I can't comment on whether there will be another government shutdown. I'm sorry.
I said, what are the plans to make data available in the case of a shutdown?
Next question. Yes.
What are plans to make data available in case of emergency?
In case of emergency? Funny you should ask about emergencies. We have, actually I don't have, I had a whole, we actually have, the LED is particularly helpful for emergencies because you have the daytime population, so if you're planning on making evacuation plans and stuff, LED is a great source. Our pop estimates, also a great source. Look them up, check them out. And we actually do a lot. NOAA is using, is it NOAA? I'm not doing it. Bill would know. We have something where we're putting like emergency, like planning. There's a hurricane coming. What's that going to impact? Kind of. We're trying to do that in real time. Do we have that up yet? It's with the National Weather Service. Thank you. Okay, great. So yeah, for emergencies, we're doing that. And we actually have done some special tabs for I think FEMA. After some disasters to try to let people, how many people are you looking for? What languages are you going to need going in? That kind of thing. Yes?
What are some of the most...
And by the way, it's all freely available data, but we can quickly process it for them. So, yes?
I was wondering, what are some of the most innovative ways and services that people are using the API and building a census data that you've seen and you've seen have impact in real life?
Well, we've got the Sunlight Foundation around here, right? They talked earlier. They've been downloading a lot of our data and doing some stuff with it that's kind of fun for their app. Do you know about Social Explorer? Do you know about Census Explorer? Census Explorer, which kind of uses Social Explorer. It's on our website. You can get on and it's downloaded the API data, and they've got. You can go into your neighborhood level and you can very, very quick. Does this thing connect to the internet? Yeah, never mind. Social Explorer, Census Explorer. It's right on our the front page of our website right now, and I particularly like that application because it actually has that 1990, 2000, and then the 2012 ACS The reason I talk about the 2012 5-year is it's 5 years, so it's 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, so it's centered on 2010. So the 2012 ACS, so you can actually see that neighborhood change for a variety of characteristics. And so I like that one. Yes?
So you made a really interesting argument for the for continuing the decennial census. To what extent are other data sources, say administrative data or other big data out there, potential sources of data for the Census Bureau to use as part of its survey programs or to complement the survey?
Well, like I said, LED actually is an administrative records-based program. It's based on the state employment insurance programs, and I think some others possibly, but it's an administrative records program already. The population estimates program has for years been an administrative records program, which is looking at birth and death records and using trying to get a migration model, county to county migration out of some very well scrubbed tax data. Very well scrubbed. We get addresses. That's it. We don't get all the other stuff that comes from tax data. It's just we need to know if you filed in this county 1 year and you filed in another county another year. So we're using administrative records where we can. But and of course on the economic side, we've got collections that are going on continuously on a lot of stuff in foreign trade and some things like that, which are also administrative. So we're doing that now.
Well, thank you. Sorry we have to cut it off they're going to kick us out of here soon. But
Okay.
thanks again, and please join me in thanking Eric.